How's it going, everyone? I've made this rogue guide for Dark and Darker to help anyone who wants to pick up rogue, or help some people who have been playing it with some more information. I'll go into detail with everything I know about this class to help you the best I can. First, I'll start with the pros and cons of playing rogue. So the pros are high skill ceiling. You have very high mobility. You're the second fastest class in the game right after the wizard. You have high burst damage. Fast interaction speed, which actually helps quite a bit with opening doors and getting away. Also activating shrines. It's a very good class for solo, and it's a lot of fun. The cons are you have a very high skill cap, you have very low health, you have very low armor as you're only able to wear cloth and leather. You're very cooldown dependent. A lot of the times you're going to want your cooldowns up for fights because they're very impactful. You have a very low damage range and pressure. You can only use melee weapons, and the only ranged weapon you have are throwing knives. Rogue is very item dependent and starts with very bad starting gear. There are three main ways to build a rogue. There's solo loot build, where the point is to avoid confrontation and accumulate as much gold as possible while playing solo in a run. Classic rogue build, which is the most played build. You'll run rupture or weak point attack with hide, and you will want to either bait enemies that come to you by using teammates or waiting as a solo while you're in stealth to ensure you get your burst damage off, or use stealth in combat to survive or burst a target depending on the situation. And full offensive build, where you'll want to drop hide and take weak point attack alongside rupture for maximum burst damage. You will need to have a bit of gear to make this work, as it's not viable to do this with the bad starting gear. You will have more chance of winning fights and surviving if you use hide early game. Rogue abilities. There are three main abilities that rogue will use. The other two are basically just for fun, they're not as useful as the other ones. The three main abilities are weak point attack, which increases your damage by 50% for the next swing, and decreases the target hit's defense by 50% for a short duration. This is really good for chain attacks or hitting the same target with your party. Rupture. Rupture scales off physical damage, so it's very strong early game and also strong late game. I recommend always running Rupture, as it's a very high source of damage. Hide. This is your stealth. It's best to always run this early game and solo. The other two abilities are Smoke Bomb, which puts down a smoke grenade on your feet. It will slow enemies in the area, and it will give you a little bit of cover to get out or fight. Caltrops. It places a caltrop on the ground, it deals a small amount of damage, and it slows the speed of the person who stepped on it by 50% for 2 seconds. Rogues have 10 different passives to choose from. A lot of them are very dependent on the play style. I'll go through each one and rank them and tell you a bit about each one. The first is Ambush. The first attack after 3 seconds of coming out of stealth, you deal 50% additional damage. This is really good for burst. It works very well as solo or in a group. This ability also works coming out of a white potion stealth. It's very, very strong, and I would recommend using it if you're going for a damage build. The next is Backstab. Backstab is very strong, though it's very situational. You have to be attacking from behind the target. So if you're playing with a group, it's very, very good. If you're playing solo, it's not going to be very effective. The next is Creep. So Creep is very good for doing solo loot runs. Otherwise, I would not recommend taking it, as just holding down shift or crouch walking is going to reduce your sound significantly as it is. Though it is very situational and you can use it on solo loot runs. The next is Dagger Expert. Dagger Expert is a very, very strong passive. You're not going to use it very much on solo runs, as there's better perks to take, but in a group or a pure PvP build, I would recommend it. Next is Hidden Pockets. Hidden Pockets is very good for stealth. If you're playing solo, I would recommend taking it, as it doesn't show the potions in your pockets, and you can stand in the darkness and you're basically in stealth unless you're lit up. It's very good for getting the drop on people without using a white potion or using your stealth, but in team play it's not as effective. Next is pickpocket. This is purely a meme. You can pickpocket other players or your teammates and take stuff out of their inventory. Not really much use for it other than having a bit of fun. Next is poisoned weapon. Poison weapon gives you quite a bit of damage output. Every time you hit with it, it applies a stack of poison up to 5 times and it ticks over 4 seconds. This scales with magic damage. Taking will or magic damage on gear will increase the damage of this quite significantly. Next is creep. Creep is very strong. I would basically always run creep unless you're not running hide. Creep makes it so you can crouch or shift walk around for 10 steps while still in stealth. So you can use this in combat for initiating or for getting away. Also you can run and jump, activate your hide, and then start creeping away for some extra distance. It's very versatile. Next is trap detection. Trap detection can be useful, but most of the time it's not going to be very useful. There are better perks that take than trap detection, and I wouldn't really recommend taking it. Usually you'll know if there's a trap around by just knowing there's archers, or just by looking at the ground and doorways. And the last one is lockpick expert. This is useful for acquiring loot if you don't have lockpicks. You get free unlimited uses to lockpick chests. This is good for solo loot runs, otherwise I would just recommend bringing a lockpick. If you're playing solo that go for loot runs, I would recommend going with creep, as you'll be able to move around in stealth a lot more and get out of situations. Hidden pockets, so you're able to turn off lights and hide in corners. Either poisoned weapon or hidden traps, as it's a good source of damage for killing players or for PvE. Or hidden traps if you're completely avoiding confrontation and you don't want to be caught out on a trap. And lockpick expert, as you're going for as much gold as possible, and locked chests usually have quite good items in them. For a classic rogue build, you will want to run creep, as you need this to reposition yourself in stealth. Poison weapon, as this is a high source of damage output. Ambush, to do a lot of burst damage coming out of stealth. And either backstab or daggers expert for additional damage. I would recommend running dagger expert if you're solo, or backstab if you're playing with a team. And for full offensive rogue, I would recommend running dagger expert for damage, poisoned weapon for damage, backstab for damage, and for the last perk you can run ambush, coming out of invisibility by white potions, or any of the other ones that you prefer. Hidden pockets is a decent option. While in combat as a rogue, you want to be weaving in and out or going for full offensive. Usually you'll want to weave in and out utilizing your skill cooldowns and getting a hit when they can't hit you. This is best shown by fighting barbarians. They will do a lot of damage to you, but they swing very slowly, so you can step in on the swing and then step out when they're going to swing again. When you commit, it's best to do it in a team fight when they're focused on your teammates, open from stealth behind their team if possible, and then go for the squishiest targets. Usually you want to focus the wizards, the rangers and their rogues and their clerics first. Once you get a kill going full offensive, it's best to quickly back off, as their team will have a lot of pressure on them and they will probably turn around to attack you, giving your teammates an opportunity to get some free hits in. One handy thing to note is that throwing knives can apply your rupture and weak point attack. So if you're not able to commit to a fight, you can poke them down by applying rupture to them with your throwing weapon. Your throwing knife also applies a slow on hit when it lands. Rogues have very low health and defense, so what you need to do in fights, instead of relying on armor, health, In shields, you have to dodge their abilities. Moving around frantically and trying to dodge their attacks is the best way to survive. Looking down when you're crouching will lower your hitbox even further and put your head closer to the ground, so it makes it harder for them to hit you with a headshot. When fighting other melee classes, if you have to commit to a fight or you're going full offensive, make sure you stand as close to them as possible so they hit you with the handle of their weapon. This will reduce their damage. Since rogues are using primarily stabbing weapons, your damage will not be affected by this and you will do the same amount. When using hide going into stealth, a cloud of smoke will appear around you for a brief time. So if you don't want enemies to see you go into stealth, it's best to do it behind a door or stealth before they turn and see you. If you're running hidden pockets and you're hiding in dark corners, make sure you don't apply your weapon poisons as they glow and they make you obvious. As for gear, you're gonna want to take true physical damage, all attributes, weapon damage, physical power, physical damage, strength, agility, and can also take will and magic damage bonuses. You should prioritize taking all attributes, true damage, and weapon damage as your main stats. Strength is very good as it gives you attack damage and also health. Agility is very useful as it gives you movement speed, and when you're using stronger gear later you will want a lot of movement speed. As for weapons, rogues are very limited to what they can use. I do recommend running a rapier as it's got a very long range compared to the other daggers. And if you're running a dagger that swipes sideways, I recommend also carrying a weapon that can stab to go over top of shields. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thanks.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over my channel. And then I start eating garbage. Subscribe to Casual Scrub War. I start blasting. Bah, bah.